And that was enough evil for one day. All right, so we have very little time left here for the afterburn, but we will take a couple of comments and questions. So if you want to line up, I won't be able to get to everybody, but we can get a few in here in the next 30 minutes. And so go ahead and start lining up. If you're on live stream, our Shamish team will take down your comments, and then Shamish Rob will read them over the mic when we get to that point. Okay, and then for the camera crew, Rabbi Tom will do with a close at the end, so just so you guys can be set for that. All right, Steve, start us off.
Okay. I want to go back to the beginning because as you were talking, I had a thought and I just wanted to give a comment. Because it's in Jeremiah 7:1, it said in there, enter the gate so we're to bow. But what we miss is we'll bow to enter, yet once we get inside, we set aside the need to bow and we want to bend his word and his ways to our needs instead of bowing our needs to his will.
Wonderful. Appreciate that. Excellent. All right, Philip.
All right, Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
So in chapter 7, there were several places there where he talked about, don't believe the false word. Was that literal for their time? Hey, don't believe this false word? Or can we glean from that for today, that we should not believe in false words?
No, because we're going to actually get to a verse in chapter 16. We're going to get to eventually, in chapter 16. We're going to get to the verse where it talks about our fathers inheriting lies and those kind of things. So it's going to be the falsehood that's come from the beginning. Always the twisting, the bending. Here, it's not as explained as much as we will get in chapter 16, maybe next week or the week after, okay? But it's going to be something we definitely cover. But it's false words, meaning it's the word twisted. Does that make sense? And that twisting is happening then, it's happening now.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
All right, Shabbat Shalom.
This teaching really got me fired up, especially when you were talking about the submission.
I'm sorry, I didn't say Brian, because Philip was just there, then he left. I thought I was still talking to Philip, and he left. I was like, you didn't wait for me to ask him how you answered this question, right? And then I looked up, and I was a little confused with the look on your face, like you were waiting.
He got a haircut.
Okay, was that good, Philip? All right, he gave me a thumbs up. All right, Brian.
But when you were talking about the submission aspect and talking about, men counseling, and I'm very passionate about that because I know what you're saying is 100% true. Like, I was one of those people that a decision was made and it didn't sit well with me. I couldn't understand it. I was upset, but I made a promise to my wife, and that's why she's such a blessing, because I told her when we got married, I said, if there is an issue that needs to be addressed, I'm going to go to the man that I submit myself to, because I told you day one, whenever I first got to counsel with you, like, if I need punched in the face, punch me in the face. Like, if I need set straight, set me straight. And when I've done that, I walked away with not just a new perception of whatever the issue was, but a newfound respect and admiration for the role that you play as Yahweh's mouthpiece. And we have a systemic issue, not just in the body, but the world as a whole. And you've touched on this before, and men are just not being men. We have completely lost touch with what it is to be a man as a whole. And being a man is what you've touched on, owning your mistakes, owning your weaknesses, and fixing them. And oftentimes that means finding, even if you're not in this walk, it means finding somebody that has what you want, whether it's your, personality or strengths, whatever the case is, and getting under that person saying, how do I get to where you're going? And there is truly blessing in this walk whenever you find that leadership, you get into that leadership and you start improving. There's a lot of changes coming down the pipe with this leadership as well, the yeshiva and the property developing, things like that. And that's all well and good, but it's not just on Rabbi, it's on the men too. If the men are not doing their jobs, it's only going to impede the vision that Rabbi's given us. So we have to really pay attention, go back over these teachings and start applying them, because if we want to be a part of this body and see that dream, that vision come true, we need to be doing our part as well.
Amen. Well said. Well said. I appreciate that very much. Okay, Denise?
Last night, while the zone meeting was going on, as you were, a scripture came to mind, not by might, not by power, but by my spirit, says Yahweh. And so I looked it up, and it was in Zechariah chapter 4, verse 6. And I ended up reading all the way through to the end of the chapter. And it was really awesome because in chapter 7, it talks about the same thing it talks about in chapter 7 of Jeremiah, where it says, "For if you truly make your ways and your deeds good, if you truly do right ruling between a man and his neighbor, if you do not oppress the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place or walk after other mighty ones to your own evil." It also says it in Zechariah chapter 7 about, thus said Yahweh of hosts, execute true right ruling, show loving commitment and compassion, everyone to his brother. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless or the sojourner or the poor. And it was just really awesome that as the zone meeting's going on and I'm reading this, and then I come here today and it brought more emphasis. I mean, if you read in chapter 5 or 4, it talks about that he was being asked about what he saw, and he answered me and said, "Do you know what these are?" And I said, "No, my master." And he said, "These are the two anointed ones who stand beside the master of all the earth." And the anointing that you show to have that explains so much to so many of us. And the fact, even what you just pointed or touched on, in the fact of showing what discipline is and how to walk it out, is something that a lot of us are really looking for that. And so it all tied in. I know I kind of jumped around, but it was just really awesome and powerful.
Well, I'm glad that you made those connections. Fantastic. And I'm glad that it also was a blessing to have from the zone meetings and connect together. All right, Ashley, and then we'll go to live stream.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
I just wanted to make a comment. When you were talking about the Christianity faith and this faith, obviously I say it a million times, I don't know nothing about Christianity, but you kind of put a thought in my head, set the bar high. And it's like, how many times have our parents say, marry someone rich, or marry someone smart, or marry someone, set the bar high, you know? And he sets the bar high for us. Why don't we return the favor and meet that bar? Because if we're going to marry him and he's going to marry us in that aspect, we need to get to the bar.
Amen. A lot of the problem is too many people are going to the bar too quickly.
Not that one.
Look, the bottom line is a lot of us are very good at setting the bar pretty high for others and not setting it for ourselves. Okay, and we need to figure that out. All right, let's set that standard, you know, because we'll look at others and even like you said, you know, set the bar high. Look for a man who, you know, is up here to take care. Well, what about are you becoming to make you worth or desirable to the man? Set the bar high for yourself as well as for him. Okay, I mean, you should have an expectation for others, but let's set our own bar high first. All right.
And then with that, I just wanted to say that you and everyone else here is such a blessing. I don't know if it's you that said it. I'm listening to a lot of motivation speakers, and you're one of them. But I'm just happy I'm not the smartest person in the room.
There you go. Listen, I want to just throw this out there because it kind of fits. The world we live in right now, and I interact with it plenty, going to businesses and restaurants and all kinds of things that are out there, the bar is on the floor, okay? So if you want to move up in a company, in a career, in anything, it's not going to take a whole lot. You can do almost anything you want because that bar is on the floor. I mean, it's almost below the floor, like you wouldn't even trip over it, okay? I mean, so don't think that, oh, well, you know, if I went and started a new career and I'm this age or that age, you could go from 0 to manager or whatever in almost no time because there's no competition. There are openings everywhere. I mean, it would take nothing. It would take nothing. I'm telling you, if I went to McDonald's today, I promise you I would be a general manager in less than a year. Any of you could do the same thing. The bar is low and the need is great. So if some of you are thinking, well, I don't want to work, well, maybe you don't have skills for anything. You can learn them and gain them and even start at the bottom, like working at a cash register somewhere. But if you put in the effort and show the interest, you could be running that place in almost no time. The need is so big. Don't listen to the numbers out there, unemployment's this low, that low. It's because they're only measuring the people that file. Most of the people stopped filing a long time ago. Okay, so they're not being counted. But you and I all go to businesses and they're all understaffed. Every one of them. I go to restaurants and I can't believe how long I have to wait and the place is still empty because they don't have enough staff to seat everybody. The kitchen's either understaffed or the waiting staff is understaffed. So I'll walk in a place that's half empty and they'll tell me there's a 20-minute wait. I'm like, 20-minute wait? And they'll say we're understaffed. And so just because she happened to mention the idea of the bar is really very easy for you. If you want to elevate, you'll just fly. I mean, there's nothing holding you back. That bar is really low. They are so desperate out there needing that if you're really actually any good at anything, you're going to move up so quick. And you put in the effort, you're going to move up so quick that you can go from 0 to wherever you want to go. I mean, like faster than you could have ever imagined. Absolutely no doubt about it. Look, my best friend went from just helping out his son at a place that he was working now. He's just helping him out and doing some pizza deliveries and driving. He now is the general manager of the store in less than a year. And he wasn't even trying to do that. He was just working to help his son out because he needed some extra, work because somebody didn't show up. And next thing you know, they saw his work ethic and they ended up putting him in, and he's running a store. Now, he's certainly qualified and great at it, but the point is, you generally don't go from driving and delivering to running the store in less than, I think it was probably even less than 6 months. But the need, if you show any competence and abilities, they're going to put you because they need. Okay, they need. No issues at all. All right, just wanted to say that's an encouragement. Okay, live stream.
From me, Rabbi, in Jeremiah 7, verses 8 and 9, and it said, in verse 8, it says, you are trusting in false words. And then at the bottom of 9, it says, and walking after other mighty ones which you have not known. Could this be related to the Deuteronomy 13, verse 2, when a false prophet comes in and says, because they've got to be listening to somebody's false words. It's not just something.
Absolutely. It definitely connects up with that. So for those you have not, which probably not a lot of you, it's probably the most popular teaching. If you haven't listened to the Beware False Prophets teaching, go listen to it. Which, by the way, that's the correct name of the teaching. It's Beware False Prophets, not Beware of False Prophets. People always name it wrong, but it's Beware False Prophets, okay? All right, continue.
Anna Uden, how do we, as adults, deal appropriately when children/teenagers do evil things? Parents and child relationships and sibling relationships. How much should we expect them to own?
It really, you know what, you're going to have to counsel about it. It really depends on how old the child is and what they're doing, okay? With younger children, you have the ability to punish, to bring consequences. And then they'll learn, if I do this, it brings this consequence that I really don't want. And at some point, they may realize I need to stop doing this so I stop getting that consequence. And the consequences, like Yahweh's consequences, should escalate. You keep doing it, it gets worse. You keep doing it, it gets worse. Okay? If I tell my child, whatever they do, it's going to be, you lose something for a day, you do it again, it's going to be a week or a couple of days. It's going to be escalated. And that's what you need to understand, right? So now, as far as expectations, it's going to have to do with you. Some of you are going to ask me questions as with children that don't even live in your house. There's not a whole lot you could do with that. But if it's children, meaning they're not adults yet, they're not 18, even the teenagers are a little bit tough, then you have to realize you have a limited authority. Much more till they turn teenager, much less once they turn teenager and you sort of shift towards counseling and advising as opposed to parenting. That's a hard shift, though, for people. To shift from being the parent because you want to parent them, but they don't want to parent anymore, okay? They barely want to talk to you. A lot of the time, I'm not saying with my kids necessarily, but I mean, I hear this all the time. And the more you don't want to just give them their space and respect them in their independence, the more they're not going to want to talk to you. The more you can give them that, the more they'll talk to you. Okay, I give a lot of that to both my children, and they talk to me a lot. But that's because I give them that. I don't try to parent them anymore. Okay, 17 and 18, I'm not parenting them. I'm going to develop a relationship where they're going to be willing to hear what I have to say and hopefully listen a little bit. And so, Anna, this is going to really depend on the age of your kids. So you can call for counsel about that. Next.
Sandy Davis, when you're on the receiving end of evil, what should you do when you've owned your part and done all you can to fix it, but they won't own their part and instead continue to do evil against you?
All right. There's actually two questions in there, not one. Okay, the first question is, what do you do about, I'll take the second one first, which is, what do you do about them not owning their evil? Well, maybe that was the first one, doesn't matter. Okay, you can't do anything about them not owning their evil. What you can do is choose whether or not you still want to have a relationship with somebody that won't own their stuff. Okay? You can't make somebody own their stuff. There's just no, Yahweh can't make you do it. You can't make anybody else do it. Now, what you have is consequences. You can say, well, if you don't own your stuff, we may end up in a divorce. If you don't own your stuff, if it's a teenager or a 20-year-old, I may throw you out of the house. So there can be consequences for not owning their stuff. But as far as the evil coming or going, same thing. You can't make them stop doing the evil either. If the evil keeps coming, then you have to choose whether or not you want to remain where you're receiving it. If you're in a place where you're constantly being harmed and suffering and miserable and everything else, you don't have to stay there. I know that's hard. A lot of choices in life are between two different things that are both hard. Staying is hard, leaving is hard. In any relationship. There's no, I don't know how else to say it. There's no marriage out there that's not hard. Divorce is hard too, though. I know a lot of divorced people, and they're still dealing with stuff from those. Those relationships never fully go away. There's always something that keeps popping up here and there because of the hardness of what that was. But then again, you're no longer in that relationship, so it may be not as hard as if you had stayed in it. Okay? So maybe that's the better solution. And so there's no easy answers to these things. So if a person is still doing things that you're suffering, because that's the word evil there, so we're talking about you're suffering because of what they're doing, if they don't want to own it and don't stop, so why are you still in the relationship? Tell them if they don't stop, the relationship could end. That might wake them up. I will tell you, a lot of marriages are only as good as they are right now because they almost got divorced. They had to get right to that line to realize what they really wanted. Without going to that line, there's no leverage. You only have one card to play. I'm assuming this is a marriage-related thing. All right? You only have one card to play in marriage. That's divorce. There's no hitting. There's no this. There's no that. There's just one card. And if you don't put that card out on the table, the other person doesn't know you're serious. So if it gets that far, now don't ever play that card unless you're willing to actually play it out all the way. Okay? It's your only card. You only use it once, but mean it when you use it. But also, if you are hoping they'll change, say, look, I don't want to use it. If you'll change, I won't use the card. But mean it. But if you don't, that's where we're going. That's the only card you got. And don't waste it and don't just play with it, and otherwise nobody will take you seriously. Because I know a lot of people that say, I'm tired of my wife or my husband always threatening divorce. Don't ever do that. You put that card on the table because you're going to use it. It's to be used, not abused, not toyed with, not emotionally manipulated with, no abusing with. You are either trying to get something ended because it needs to end, or getting the other person to realize how serious you are because you really don't want it to end, but you're not feeling like you have a choice because of the suffering. Okay? And so it has to be very, very thoughtfully and carefully and probably with counsel, used. And there are some people out there I think need to be divorced. I'm going to be the only one on the internet saying that to people because they're just miserable and there's no intention of fixing it. And all they're doing is just making each other more miserable. And then the children are getting affected, everybody's getting affected. It's like, look, really what they should do is fix it. But if they just won't, then the better choice than just all that misery is the other way. And by the way, a lot of them, and if you think I'm talking about you, I'm not even thinking about you, but I am talking about you. In other words, if this shoe fits, I got a bunch of men out there that their wives are miserable and they will not talk to me. The wives will, but the husbands won't. And I'm not just talking about here in the congregation necessarily. I'm talking about I talk to wives from all over the world that want to talk about their problems with their husbands, and they will not talk to me. And there's nothing I can do. And I tell the poor ladies, I said, look, I can't even figure out how much is their fault because I'm only hearing one side. And by the way, guys, I'm not just believing the ladies. I just don't know what to tell them because I'm only hearing half the story. And trust me, I never believe just half a story. Okay, if you ever counsel with me, you'll know I am not believing half a story. And if I hear both sides, I'm only going to believe the parts you both agree on. I'm not going to believe anything else. If you don't agree, then I have no idea who's right. Okay? Only the stuff you both say and you both said the same, that's the stuff I know is probably true. Everything else, he said, she said. But, guys, I don't know what to do to get you to stop having such an ego pride problem, shame, whatever it is, to come and get help. I'm not just saying just talk to me, but come ready and willing to hear, you need to fix this, you need to change, and hear your part. Because I promise you, every single one of these deals, both have a part. There is no marriage that was on one-sided that I've dealt with. If it was that abusive, then there should have been another. Those are the ones that are easy divorces and happen right away at some point. But the ones where it's just unresolvable stuff, that people just stubbornly, it's almost always both sides on some level, okay? And if they both adjust, it could work. If one adjusts, it's not going to work. They both have to adjust. It's really tough. I counsel marriages in trouble probably at least every day. At least one session a day that I counsel is on that, at least. And I'm not just talking about a congregation. I don't want everybody to think it's happening here. A lot of what I counsel isn't here. People call, they make appointments, they're all over the world, okay? So don't read into this anything you don't need to. It's everywhere the same, okay? And if you're in a marriage, I don't want you to feel so discouraged, like, well, it's just my marriage. No, they all do. And if you don't know about it, that doesn't mean it's not there. It just means you don't know about it, okay? Trust me when I tell you this. They all have moments of struggle. And of course, if they're doing well enough at times, that means that they also do really well sometimes. Okay, and it's a roller coaster. And if you get those highs high enough, then the lows, maybe you can survive through all of those. Of course, if the highs are really low and the lows are really low, then we're not really going to get anywhere. Then everybody's miserable. Okay? And I can help you with that if you're willing to do it. But you know the sad part? Every one of those guys that I'm talking about has got their heels dug in and they're never going to call me. It's sad. Especially now that I said this, they're not going to call me. You know? Because then they'd have to admit, A, they have a problem, and B, that's been going on for a long time, they should have called me. That takes humbleness. And you know what the first thing was in Deuteronomy 8:2? He said, I led them through the wilderness to humble them. And then the second part says to see whether or not it was in their heart through testing, whether it was in their heart to keep the commandments or not. See, I got Deuteronomy 10:12 and 8:2 in today. All right? But that humbleness, we got a lot of guys out there that have way too much pride, ego, and emotional junk to actually own their stuff and say, hey, I need help. And I can promise you, the guys that have done that have gotten help. And they have benefited tremendously. And not because of just the sage wisdom I may have given them, but because it started them on a journey of actually owning their stuff and fixing things, which in itself is always going to bring good fruit. Okay? All right, next.
Just a little quick comment. Lynette Boyd said, pride goeth before a fall. So, Greg Wall.
And after the fall and through the fall and...
Greg Wallen, Rabbi, do you see your decision to be disciplined as a response to a quote-unquote consequence alarm, like in Jeremiah 7:20? Do you feel you were not obeying or inclining your ear to what Yahweh was telling you?
I'm trying to think if he's talking about my decision to lose weight here. No, I mean, look, I just got tired of, being tired of, so to speak. I mean, at some point you just got to own that your physical condition is under your full authority, And I got tired of not fitting in certain things. I mean, I went to go put on a dress shirt the other day for something we were going to do, and I didn't have any dress shirts that fit anymore, And that I just was like, really? I don't have a button shirt that fits. Certainly not one that would have gone with the suit I was wearing. And I'm thinking, enough already. I've got so much clothes, if I would just drop a little bit, that I never threw out, that is in great condition, that I wore just for a little while until I outgrew them, that I could be wearing right now. And so I've just had enough of that. Okay? Plus, I decided to do it as an example to my family, to you guys, everybody. I wanted to show you what that could look like. Plus, I'm tired of Jet getting on me all the time. I'm kidding. My personal trainer friend from the Philippines, right? So, anyway, Jet, don't worry. When I see you, I'll push up you, I'll out everything. Don't you worry. Okay? All right, so, did you have something? Steve, it looks like you wanted a second dip
Just
here.
real quick, I'm sorry. I had a comment on shame. We have no shame because we attribute our behavior to what someone else did or said rather than taking responsibility for our actions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Rob, one last one, then I'll get Grayson and we'll be finished if you got a quick one.
Nicole Davidson from Rocky says, if we must consciously choose to do evil, does that mean we must consciously choose to do the fruits of the Ruach?
Yes. Okay. Now, bear in mind, the evil one is a little bit more tricky in that you may do things not realizing they're causing harm, but then once you do realize it, then you must consciously choose to do or not to do. Okay, so there are things that we do. The evil one's a lot more tricky than the fruit. The fruit is very specific, and you need to, if you're going to choose to be patient or kind or gentle, etc., you have to choose to do those things. And sometimes you can do them because you've had that habit during your life. But the evil thing is a little more tricky because when you can be thinking you're doing good, ladies, pay attention. Because you ladies are often, if you're married, you have spouses that will tell you this and children that will tell you this. Oh, I was just trying to help. Okay? And all this evil came out of it. Not that it was so bad that you were trying to help, but it wasn't what the person wanted, and some suffering came out of it, and it went sideways, and that happens so often out of the intention to do good. And we have to be very careful with it. So the bigger key to what Rocky's asking is, once you realize that you're trying to do good is actually causing suffering or harm in some way, you need to learn to adjust. That's the conscious decision. Remember, I said that evil could be something that was intended for good but received as evil. That happens a lot. I've got a lot of spouses counseling saying, but I was just trying to help, and he gets so mad, but it wasn't what he wanted. Remember, I told you, it's not helpful if the other person doesn't think it's helpful. You need to own that is reality. That's the absolute truth. Okay? It doesn't matter how helpful you think you are. Unless the other person thinks it's helpful, it is not. Okay? Even if you were right, it doesn't matter. They're not going to think it's helpful. If they are not wanting it, then don't do it. Okay? Now, I'm not talking about with your little kids. I'm just talking about with adults. Don't do for people and don't do things that you think are helpful if they don't want it. It's only going to bite you in the face or anywhere. It's just gonna kick you in the teeth. It's not gonna go well. Anybody know what I'm talking about? All right? Just don't do it. Because I know a lot of people can tell me over and over again, I don't know why I keep doing stuff for this one because it keeps biting me in the rear. Well, stop doing it. Oh, but I love him or her or whatever so much, but it's not what they want. I was just trying to help. All right, Grayson.
I had a comment on something I wrote down in my notes from what you were saying, and what I wrote down was that I'm pretty sure you said that you suffer because of your inability to grow up. And I just think that's incredibly profound because when you're a kid and you're going through life, you view life as something that's happening to you. And then when you grow up, you realize that you have full control and responsibility of the things that are happening. And so when you suffer and you have that, and you've grown up and you're like, okay, I'm suffering because of something that I've done. And then when you really grow up and you take responsibility for the perception of that suffering, instead of it just being the suffering that's happening, you realize that I'm suffering because Yahweh is trying to get my attention so that I can grow in this area of my life. Then then through doing that, you're finding the good in the evil situation that's happening. And all of these things that you're telling us is basically just how to eliminate negativity from our lives. And I just think that's just such a blessing, and it's one that you only are going to be able to inherit if you actually do and listen to the words that are coming out of the voice of Yahweh. And if we don't, you are choosing your own suffering. And so I just cannot thank you enough for everything you do for us.
Amen.
And thank you for serving in your role.
Amen. Thank you. Amen. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up.